went there for survival. And after the survival, anyway. However, oh, okay. Kironyo, you asked me about the airlift. Now, you've heard a lot about the airlift because of now the new president-elect, because his father is supposed to have been one of the first students who went to America through an organized scholarship, by the late Thomas Boyer. Yeah, this was one of the biggest contribution made by a few people, and which has ended up with far-reaching benefits. The reason I said so is because of the number of people whom I don't know how many there were, who benefited from the airlift. The initial objective of the airlift was for the students to go and acquire an education which would enable them to come back and take over the running of their own new government, because the airlift was being arranged towards the end of our war of independence, from I think 1959, between 59 and 1962 or 61, thereabout. I happen to have been a beneficiary of that airlift. My initial education was standard 8 education, and that is 8 years of formal schooling, plus 3 years of career training, which included a furthering of academic as well as teaching methods. Now, when I learned about through a friend, and I learned about the airlift, that friend was already in the US. He sent me a list of many colleges which I could apply to, and also gave me the contact of Tom Boyer's office where they were working from at Solidarity Building. So after applying for the colleges, and after being admitted by many, I can't remember, I chose one college which seemed to give me the best scholarship, which consisted of tuition and a working position, which was to pay for my board and room. And so I accepted that one. Then that college was called Mount Angel College in Oregon. After securing that admission, I went to Solidarity Building, and I met the committee which was dealing with scholarships. And I met Tom Boyer, Munyo Yaki, and Julius Keano. They told us about the purpose of the airlift and how to go about it. They told us that we had to raise 3,000 shillings for our own personal expenses, to be able to go and buy our own clothes initially while we settled there. And so I embarked on a process of raising that money. I, as a teacher, had saved 800 shillings. So I was to raise 2,200 shillings. That was a gigantic task. So while I was preparing myself to go, I did not inform my father because I didn't want to get discouraged. So after securing now the promise that if I raised 3,000 shillings, and since I had already been admitted to a college and I had a scholarship, then I decided now that was the time to approach my father. So when I told him that I am going to America, he was shocked. He asked me, "You are so old. Why are you going to America at this age? Why are you going to study at this age?" That time I was 23 years. I told my father, as far as age is concerned, that's my own affair. My father was very good because he allowed dialogue and argument. He allowed a lot of argument. So I told him, that's not your line, it's mine. So I decided to go and have and study. But what I want from you is your blessing. And he asked me, now I'm so poor. How do I help you? I can't even afford that education. I told him I have already got secured this admission, I have secured an airlift, and I have secured partial scholarship, and I'm going to work for the rest of the upkeep. What I want from you is your blessing and an ability, and I also want you to assist me to raise this 2,800. That was also a weighty thing for him. Then he always respected my decisions. Whenever I explained my position, he would now surrender his position and join me in the pursuit of whatever I had proposed. So he and I decided, I asked him whether he could organize a tea party where I was teaching so that I can now do some fundraising. And he agreed. So I raised some money through that fundraising. But the amazing thing that enabled us to go also was a goodwill from our Asian people. I was told by other students, if you go to the Biashara Street, if you go to River Road and show an Asian guy these documents, they'll give you money. And I went there from Biashara Street showing, and then they would say, now everybody's coming, but they'll give you something. Because they'll see you have an animation, you have been promised an airlift, and they again were collaborating with us for the country to be independent. So I was able to get money that way from the Asians and from my tea party and from my legal saving. So I was one of the people who went to America with the third or fourth airlift. That was in 1960, I think late September. And we landed in New York with a friend of mine called, now she's a Dr. Njeri. She teaches in Maryland, and I'm not so sure. And then we went to Oregon, just the two of us. We landed in New York, and up to this minute, the throbbing of New York was just something else. Although I had seen cars here, quiet in Nairobi, I was amazed by the height of these buildings, which are now covering. There was no air, there was no air, there was no sunlight. Because all I saw were these tall buildings, and I didn't like it, actually. And the noise, whoo, whoo, cars were moving so fast. And I said, how do people cross the streets?